The moment Eric slapped a hotel key card onto the dinner table and told me I could sleep somewhere else if I couldn't show his family some respect, 34 people stopped talking. Forks froze halfway to mouths. A wine glass clicked against a plate. The fire behind him popped once, and my wife of 26 years sat 2 chairs away from me staring at the tablecloth. I looked at Susan. I didn't need her to fight anyone. I didn't need a speech. One sentence would have been enough. That's my husband. You don't speak to him that way. Instead, she lifted her eyes and said quietly, "Mark, please, just apologize. Don't ruin this weekend." That was the moment something inside me went still. Not because Eric had embarrassed me. He'd been doing that in smaller ways for years. It was because Susan had watched him do it in front of her entire family and decided my apology was the fastest way to make everyone comfortable again. I looked at the key card sitting between the salt and pepper shakers. Then I smiled. "Understood," I said. Eric leaned back like the problem had been solved. Susan exhaled. They thought I'd surrendered. What they didn't understand was that I'd spent 26 years proving how much I was willing to carry for that family. They were about to learn what happened when I finally put it down. My name is Mark Donovan. I was 58 that weekend. And by then, I had become very good at being useful. Susan's father needed help replacing a water heater late at night. I showed up. Her mother got stranded in Atlanta after a canceled flight. I drove down and brought her home. When Susan's sister Kelly went through a divorce, I spent 3 weekends moving furniture, patching drywall, and changing locks. When Eric bought his first house and discovered the back deck was rotting underneath, I helped him rebuild it. When one of their cousins needed a job, I made a phone call. 8 years later, he still worked for the same company. I never kept a bill. I never asked for a favor back. I thought that was what family meant. The anniversary weekend was supposed to be simple. Susan's parents, Harold and Patricia, had rented a large mountain lodge and invited the whole family. 3 floors, a stone fireplace, a wraparound deck, and enough bedrooms that nobody should have had to argue about where to sleep. Susan had been looking forward to it for weeks. "This will be good for us," she told me while we packed. At the time, I thought she meant 2 days away from work. The drive up was actually nice. She kicked off her shoes, stole the heat from my side of the car, changed the radio station every 10 minutes, and laughed when I missed an exit. At one point, she rested her hand on my forearm and left it there. For 2 hours, we felt like the couple I still believed we were. WWW. Eric was outside when we arrived, directing cars like he owned the mountain. He hugged Susan, then looked at me. "Mark, you made it." Traffic tried to stop me. His eyes dropped to the small toolbox behind my seat. "You bring that thing on vacation?" "Habit." Susan laughed. "He can't go anywhere without expecting something to break." Eric grinned. "Every family needs maintenance." A few people laughed. So did I. That was easier. Inside, the lodge was already loud. Kids were running through hallways. Coats were piled across chairs. Patricia was calling instructions from the kitchen while Harold argued with someone about football. I carried our bags inside, then grabbed 2 more because Kelly was struggling with hers. By the time I came back downstairs, Eric had taped a room list to the refrigerator. Harold and Patricia had the master suite. Eric and his wife had one of the larger rooms upstairs. Kelly and her daughters had another. Susan scanned the list. "Where are we?" Eric pointed. "Lower level. Last door on the left." Susan paused. "The room with the twin beds?" "It's 2 nights," Eric said. Then he looked at me. "Besides, Mark probably sleeps better next to the mechanical room." A few people laughed again. Susan smiled. I picked up our bags. The room was beside the laundry area. 2 narrow beds, 1 small window, a folding chair in the corner. Susan came in behind me and dropped her purse onto one of the beds. "Oh, it's fine." I didn't say it wasn't. She watched me. "I know that look." What look? The one where you decide everybody is disrespecting you. That caught me because I hadn't complained. I hadn't mentioned Eric's joke. I hadn't said a word about the room. Susan was already defending them against an argument I hadn't made. "I'm fine," I said. She relaxed. "Good." Then she kissed my cheek and went upstairs. The washing machine started behind the wall. I laughed once, quietly. Saturday morning. Harold mentioned a loose section of railing on the back deck. "It moves when you lean on it," he said. "I can tighten it," I told him. "I've got tools in the car." Before Harold answered, Eric said, "Let the professionals handle it." I looked at him. I'd spent 31 years in commercial facilities management. Donovan Facilities Group maintained 27 commercial properties across eastern Tennessee. I had 41 employees. Eric knew exactly what I did. "I think I can handle 4 screws," I said. He smiled. "I just mean whoever the lodge uses. Liability." Sure, I left it alone. Later, Patricia wanted family pictures on the deck. The photographer started arranging everyone for a full family photo. I stepped toward Susan. Before I reached her, Eric lifted a hand. "Let's get the Bennetts first." Then he handed me Susan's phone. "Grab a few on this too." I looked at the professional photographer standing 10 feet away. Then at the phone, Susan gave me a small smile. "Please, honey." So I took 6 pictures. Harold had his arm around Patricia. Eric leaned in from one side. Kelly stood on the other. Susan was right in the middle, smiling. When I finished, Eric checked the screen. "Those work." The photographer immediately moved them into another pose, then another. Nobody called me back in. Kelly's 17-year-old daughter, Megan, was standing near the door. She looked at the family, then at me. "Aren't you getting in one?" "I think I've been promoted to photographer." She frowned. "That's messed up." I smiled at her. "You're still young enough to say that out loud." She didn't smile back. That stayed with me. A 17-year-old had noticed in less than a minute what Susan had spent years telling me I was too sensitive to see. That afternoon, the family gathered around the fireplace before dinner. Drinks came out. Stories got louder. Someone asked what I did for work. Eric answered before I could. "Mark keeps buildings alive. Broken toilets, air conditioners, doors, that kind of stuff." He laughed. I looked at him. "Something like that." Susan knew my company. She knew how long I'd built it. She knew Eric was reducing 31 years of work to clogged toilets because he wanted a laugh. Eric lifted his glass. He's humble about it. Susan smiled into her wine. "He likes being needed." That changed the room. Eric leaned back. "That explains a lot." The laughter came harder this time. I looked at Susan. For years, I'd told myself she simply didn't notice how her family treated me. That possibility disappeared while she smiled into that glass. She noticed. It was just easier to laugh with them than stand beside me. I didn't confront her. I got another drink, sat down, and listened. That evening, I went downstairs to change before dinner. Susan's phone was charging on the dresser. The screen lit up while I buttoned my shirt. A message from Kelly appeared. "Do you think Mark is going to make a scene tonight?" I didn't touch the phone. A second notification appeared almost immediately. Susan had replied from her watch. "I already talked to him. If he starts, Eric will handle it." I stared at those words. If he starts, Eric will handle it. They'd been talking about me before I'd done anything. The room assignment made sense. The warnings made sense. The way Susan had been watching me all day made sense. She hadn't been trying to protect me from her family. She'd been trying to manage me for them. Someone upstairs called everyone to dinner. I finished buttoning my shirt, straightened my collar, and walked toward the stairs. 34 people were already taking their seats. Dinner started quietly. For the first 20 minutes, nobody said much to me beyond the normal questions. Did I want potatoes? Was the steak good? Did I need more water? Susan relaxed. Then Eric put down his fork. Before dessert, There's something we probably need to clear up. The room died almost instantly. He turned toward me. Mark, this weekend is supposed to be about Mom and Dad. I know, and I think everybody has felt some tension from you. I set my fork down. What tension? The room, the pictures, the jokes, the railing. You've been walking around all weekend, acting insulted. I've barely said anything. Exactly, Eric said. That's what you do. You get quiet, make faces, make everybody uncomfortable. Then later, you act like you never said anything. Even my silence had become evidence. Susan finally spoke. Mark, he's not completely wrong. I turned toward her. What exactly did I do? You've been distant. I slept in a basement beside a washing machine. Eric shook his head. There, that a few nervous laughs moved around the table. I looked at him. He leaned forward. You've always had this problem with our family. You think everybody owes you something? For what? All the things you do. Fixing stuff, favors, rides, jobs, you keep score. I stared at him. 26 years of showing up had just been turned into evidence against me. I've never asked anyone here for anything in return. You don't have to, Eric said. People feel it. Then Susan looked at me. Sometimes they do. That was worse than anything Eric had said. Is that what you think? Susan swallowed. I think you remember everything. I do remember. Eric leaned back like he'd won. See? No, Eric. You don't. The room went still. I remember because those things mattered to me. I didn't rebuild your deck so I could mention it 20 years later. I did it because you called and needed help. I didn't drive Patricia home from Atlanta because I wanted applause. She was stranded. I didn't help Kelly move because I wanted her to owe me. She was going through the worst month of her life. Kelly lowered her eyes. I turned to Susan. I didn't spend all these years showing up for these people because I was keeping score. I showed up because they were yours. For 1 second, guilt crossed her face. Then Eric reached into his jacket and pulled out a hotel key card. There's a hotel about 15 minutes down the road. He placed it beside my plate. If you can't get through one weekend without making everybody feel guilty, maybe you should stay there tonight. Nobody moved. I looked at the card. You booked me a room? It was a precaution. He had apparently booked the room and picked up the key that afternoon. I turned to Susan. Her face answered before she did. You knew. Mark, you knew about the hotel. It was just in case things got uncomfortable. That was when the whole weekend finally came into focus. They had prepared for me like I was a problem they expected to contain, and my wife had helped them. I looked at Susan for a long time. She still had one chance to change the room. Instead, she whispered, Mark, please, just apologize. Don't ruin this weekend. I looked back at the key card. Then I smiled. Understood. Eric's shoulders loosened. Susan exhaled. I picked up the card and stood. Susan caught my wrist. Mark, I'm not making a scene. Her grip loosened. I'm doing exactly what you asked. I went downstairs and packed. 5 minutes later, Susan appeared in the doorway. What are you doing? Packing. Mark, stop. I'm not stopping. This is insane. It's one family disagreement. No, you're proving Eric right. I looked at her. That sentence removed whatever doubt I had left. Your brother put a hotel key beside my plate in front of 34 people. He was frustrated. You knew he had the room. I told you. It was a precaution, and when he told me to leave, you asked me to apologize. I was trying to calm things down. For them. For everybody. No, Susan. For them. She crossed her arms. What do you want me to do? Turn against my entire family because your feelings got hurt? I picked up my coat. I never asked you to turn against your family. I looked at her. I needed to know whether I was part of it. Her expression changed. Of course you are. Tonight answered that. I walked upstairs with my suitcase. The dining room went quiet when I crossed the hallway. Eric saw the bag. So you're really leaving? Wasn't that the idea? I meant for tonight. I know what you meant. Outside. A fine rain hung over the parking area. I put the suitcase in my truck and drove away. My phone started ringing before I reached the bottom of the mountain road. Susan. Eric Susan again. Then a text. Please come back. We can talk after everyone goes to bed. Another followed. Don't make this bigger than it is. I put the phone face down. Susan still thought the problem was dinner. She had no idea dinner was only the moment I finally stopped making everything smaller. I drove for nearly an hour before I pulled into a gas station. The phone showed 11 missed calls. Then my daughter Claire called. I answered. Dad, I'm here. Are you okay? I've had better dinners. Mom called me. I figured, she said. Uncle Eric offered you a hotel because you'd been acting hostile all weekend. Did she tell you they booked the room before dinner? Claire went Keith. No. Did she tell you she knew about it? No. I looked through the rain. Claire lowered her voice. Dad, there's something else. I waited. Mom has been talking about you retiring. That isn't new. Not like this. She told me that at Christmas, she'd heard Susan and Eric talking in Patricia's kitchen. Eric said I would never slow down unless someone pushed me. Susan said she was trying to get me to think differently. They talked about what the company might be worth if I sold part of it. None of that proved a conspiracy. It proved something simpler. My future had become a family discussion that somehow didn't include me. Don't call your mother and tell her we talked. I said, all right, and stay out of the middle. I'm already in it. No, you're our daughter. You're not our referee. She was quiet. Then she said, I love you. I love you too. I drove to my office outside Knoxville. Donovan Facilities Group sat dark at the edge of an industrial park. Brick walls, metal doors, 3 service trucks. Behind the gate, nothing glamorous. But when I walked inside, I could breathe. I opened my laptop because I wanted facts. Our joint savings balance was lower than I remembered. 3 transfers stood out. $8,000, $10,000, $14,000, $32,000 total. All moved into Susan's personal account. Over the previous 6 weeks, I checked the dates twice. Then Susan called. This time, I answered, Where are you? At the office. Can you please come back? No. Eric knows he went too far. Has he told me that? No. But then he hasn't apologized. She exhaled. I looked at the bank statement. Why did you move $32,000 out of our savings? Silence. Then why are you going through the accounts right now? That isn't an answer. It's our money. I know. So I didn't steal anything. I didn't say you did. I asked where it went. She finally told me. Her parents were trying to buy the property beside their lake house. Another buyer had appeared, and they needed the deposit quickly. Susan had moved the money so they wouldn't lose it. You gave your parents $32,000. Without telling me, I loaned it to them. Without telling me, I knew you'd make it into a whole thing. That sentence hurt more than the amount. I might have agreed. Susan went quiet. If you'd called and said your parents needed help buying that land, I might have said yes. You would have asked 20 questions. Probably. $32,000 is enough money for a conversation. She didn't answer. Did Eric know? Yes. Did your parents know where the money came from? Yes. Everybody knew except me. I leaned back in my chair. Susan, when did I stop being the person you talked to first? For a long time. Neither of us said anything. Then she said, You work all the time. That isn't an answer. I never know how you're going to react. Still not an answer. Her voice cracked. I was tired of asking permission for everything. That was the first honest thing she'd said all night. Susan had been carrying resentment. I'd been carrying certainty that providing and showing up meant our marriage was fine. Both of us had been wrong about something, but only one of us had started making major decisions with other people instead of with a spouse. I asked one last question. Did you know Eric planned to put that hotel key on the table? Another long pause. Yes, I closed my eyes. Did you agree with it? I thought if things got bad, you could cool off somewhere else. I almost laughed. You prepared an exit for me before I had done anything. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. Susan started crying. 26 years. Don't disappear in one phone call. Part of me wanted to tell her I was coming home and fix the whole thing before sunrise. I didn't. I need some time. I said, how much? I don't know. Are you leaving me? I looked at our wedding photograph on the shelf. I haven't decided anything. That was the truth. But I'm not coming back to the lodge. The next morning I went home. Susan was sitting at the kitchen table with a cold cup of coffee. For a few minutes we spoke carefully. Then she told me what she'd really been angry about. I worked too much. I came home and stayed mentally at work. I checked emails at dinner. I'd canceled 4 trips over the years because something at the company had gone wrong. You think because you provide for everybody, nobody gets to be frustrated with you, she said. That one landed. I nodded. I should have listened better. Susan looked surprised. I probably did act like being dependable excused being unavailable. It didn't. Her face softened. For a second, we were finally talking about our marriage instead of her family. Then I said, but none of that explains the hotel key. Her expression closed again. Mark, none of it explains moving money without telling me. And none of it explains why you were discussing the value of my company with Eric. She looked away. That was when I knew Claire had heard correctly. What did you ask him to do? Susan rubbed both hands over her face. I asked him to help me understand what selling part of the business might look like. For me? For us? No, for me. I wasn't in the conversation. You never would have had it voluntarily. So you had it without me. Susan said nothing. I looked at the woman I'd shared most of my adult life with. The issue wasn't that she wanted more of my time. She should have wanted more. The issue was that she had stopped believing I deserved a voice in decisions about how my time, my work, and our money would be handled. I stood. I'm going back to the office for a few days. Her eyes filled. So that's it? No? I shook my head. But I need space. She followed me upstairs while I packed. At the bedroom door, she said, maybe you should stay at the office until you figure out what you actually want. I stopped folding a shirt. 9 hours earlier, her brother had handed me a place to sleep. Now my wife had done the same thing. I looked at her. Is that what you want? I want you to stop making me choose between you and my family. I zipped the bag. You already chose. Her face went pale. He left. That afternoon, I called Daniel Mercer. I told him everything, including the part I didn't enjoy admitting about my own marriage. He listened. Then he said, first, do nothing stupid. I was hoping for something warmer. That is warm, despite myself. I smiled. He told me not to move money, change locks, threaten anyone, or use the company as a weapon. Then he said something I wrote down. Protecting yourself isn't the same thing as punishing somebody. I looked at the note. What does protecting myself look like? Facts. Boundaries. No decisions made in anger. He helped me reduce the situation to 3 things. Joint money required a joint conversation. Business information didn't leave the company without my approval. Problems in our marriage had to come to me before they became a family committee discussion. That isn't a legal document, Daniel said. I know. Good. Then don't wave it around, like one. The next evening, Susan came to my office. She looked exhausted. I told her what I needed. No secret transfers. No Eric in my business. No major decisions about our marriage happening with her family before they happened with me. Susan stared at me. You can't tell me who I'm allowed to talk to. I'm not. Talk to anyone you want. But decisions about us happen with us. She looked away. Then she said, I've been lonely. I believe you. You always say that now. Because I should have believed it earlier. That took some of the fight out of her. We sat in silence for a while. Then I asked, "Why did you agree to the hotel room?" Susan looked down. "Because Eric said you were going to ruin the weekend. You believed him." Before I even arrived. I know. No defense followed. That mattered. She wiped her face. "I'm sorry. I waited. I'm sorry about the room. I'm sorry about the money. And I'm sorry I made you sound like a problem before you'd even done anything. It didn't fix the marriage. It did something smaller and more useful. It gave us one honest place to start. Susan's parents repaid the $32,000 over the next several months. The property deal nearly fell apart. But they found another way to finance it. No more money came out of our joint savings. I didn't call a broker. I didn't rescue anybody. The deal eventually closed without me. That experience taught me something I should have learned years earlier. People become very creative when the man they always call stops answering with his wallet and his toolbox. Susan and I started counseling. I cut back my hours and hired another operations manager. Susan stopped taking our arguments to her family before she brought them to me. Neither change happened quickly. Neither erased what had happened, but both were real. Eric's number stayed blocked. I didn't see him for almost 4 months. I was comfortable with that. 9 months after the lodge weekend, Patricia invited us to a family dinner. Susan handed me the invitation. "You don't have to go." That sentence told me how much had changed. The old Susan would have told me everyone expected me. The old Mark would have gone for the same reason. I looked at her. "Do you want me there?" "Yes." "Then I'll go." Eric was already seated when we arrived. We nodded at each other. That was all. Dinner stayed civil for almost an hour. Then Harold mentioned that one of the supports under the dock had shifted. Before I could say anything, Eric laughed. "Well, we've got maintenance here. 9 months earlier." I would have smiled. I might have gone outside after dinner and fixed it. I didn't need to. Susan put down her fork. "Eric." He looked at her. "What?" "Stop." He smiled like she was joking. "I'm kidding. I know. Stop." Her voice never rose. The table went quiet. Eric looked around for support. Nobody gave him any. Then he looked at me. "All right." Susan picked up her fork and continued eating. That was the sentence I had waited for at the lodge. It arrived 9 months late. But this time, she said it without being asked. After dinner, Harold came over. "Want to take a look at that dock?" I smiled. "No." He blinked. Then he nodded. "I'll call somebody Monday." Good idea. Nothing terrible happened. The dock waited. Harold survived. The family survived. And I went home with my wife. Eric caught me near the driveway. "Mark," I turned. "For once." He didn't look like the chairman of anything. "I owe you an apology." I waited. I shouldn't have done what I did at the lodge. The hotel room. The dinner. All of it. "No. You shouldn't have." He nodded. "I thought I was protecting Susan." "You were protecting your version of Susan." He looked down. "Fair." There was a time when those words would have meant everything to me. Now they were simply words. "I appreciate you saying it." He looked relieved. "So we're good?" There it was. The old invitation. Make it easy. Erase the cost. Put everything back where it was. I looked at him. "We're civil." His face changed. "That's it?" "For now." He absorbed that, then nodded. "Okay." I got into my truck. Susan was waiting in the passenger seat. As we pulled away, she rested her hand on my arm the same way she had on the drive to the lodge. Our marriage wasn't perfect. It wasn't the same either. That was the point. For years, I thought family meant showing up no matter how people treated you. I thought being dependable meant saying yes before anyone even finished asking. I was wrong. Eric gave me a hotel key because he thought sending me away would teach me my place. It did. I learned my place wasn't in any room where being useful was the price of belonging. And once I understood that, I never needed that key again.